Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flatback 3. Thank you very much for joining us. The 26 of you who have subscribed to the channel and over 1,000 people who have watched our videos now. We appreciate having you back once again as we are here to talk about the fantastic finale of the oh no, it was shit. To talk about the terrible finale of The Mandalorian Season 3 as we continue to berate Star Wars for being exactly what it is, a terrible streaming show rather than a set of movies in the biggest franchise of all time, other than potentially Lord of the Rings. George, I'm joined by you, although it says K on your little tag thing today. How are you doing?
I'm well, and so is Kay. So yeah, we're both good.
Okay. George, Mandalorian Season 3 is officially over. It was not good, in my opinion. I did not enjoy the season as much as you did in bulk anyway. And I am going to sort of use some evidence to back up the fact that I thought that this season was poor throughout, in that we will have a look at the IMDb fan ratings for the... Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so the IMDb fan ratings for the episode 2 episode of this season's Mandalorian started off at a 7.5, 8.3, 7 point, like nothing really too much. The Spy's got a pretty good rating of 8.9, which I think is generous, although, you know, it did have a lot of action in it, I suppose. And then the finale got an 8.5 as well, but that's been rated by 3,500 people less than most of the other videos. Compared to season 2, where 7.8 was the lowest rating throughout, and season 1, where the lowest rating was 7.5 for the middle of the series, but in its first series, not that bad. So evidence to show, sorry, I'm going to keep scrolling around, evidence to show that this season has been pretty shitty. And I think that the 8.5 that the finale got is extremely generous for what actually occurred. I think that people sometimes just, with a finale of a program, get a little bit turned around by all the action scenes and the so-called emotional scenes that are in this. And obviously we'll talk about some of the scenes in a moment. In terms of Mandalorian Season 3 responses online, just Googled The Mandalorian Season 3, and most of the headlines, including the Metro, the Express, the Hollywood Reporter, are all saying that the Mandalorian was pretty terrible. So you can see like words like rushed, underwhelming, awful, embarrassing. So it's not just us, and it's not just the select few people who, you know, have decided that this show is not quite what it once was. What were your thoughts on the finale, mate?
So long listeners of the pod will know I am a positive guy, and I will start off with the only positive I had for this episode, and as for the whole season, actually.
It finished.
Is that it's finished. But also, I just love the Mandalorian character. I've really enjoyed learning about the culture. And I just think the special effects of The Mandalorian has been really cool this season, just to see them all like flying around, fighting. So that, I mean, yeah, that's the only positive I have, is that I've enjoyed learning more about the Mandalorians and how cool they look, basically.
Well, just really quickly on that point, and then long listeners to the podcast, watchers of the channel, will know that I'm extremely negative in all situations, especially when it comes to Star Wars and Marvel in the last 3 or 4 years. Like you said about there, learning about the culture, flying and fighting, like I feel like the action scenes have largely made the Mandalorians look like idiots throughout most of this series, like when they were getting attacked by the giant crocodile, when they were getting attacked and subsequently chasing the pterodactyl, which just to skip ahead really quickly, there was one thing where I was like, isn't it convenient that previously when the pterodactyl took the child Mandalorian and they couldn't chase him for more than like 2 minutes because they ran out of fuel, in this episode no one had to refuel their jetpacks at all. Everyone was flying all over the place, literally from outside the atmosphere of the planet to the planet, and for one guy's case, and back. It was really interesting to me that they're not consistent. But you said about like learning about the culture, but what do we know about the culture other than they say a speech and then they put a helmet
Mm.
on and then they don't take the helmet on unless they're Bo-Katan, because Bo-Katan is special and she can do both.
Maybe I spoke too soon. I was saying that then. I guess just the aesthetics. I think just like the
Yeah,
special effects and just how they're. I don't know. It's just something every time I saw them, like when they're on the ship and they drop down off from and they're
that was
flying with
cool.
their jetpacks and stuff. I just think all those sort of things look really cool. And even in this episode, when they were fighting the flying space troopers or whatever they were, I just thought that looked really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, but that's the thing, and this is again not to be, it's not a criticism of you or anyone else that enjoys these specific things, but I think that Star Wars, if you think about what Star Wars was, even in the prequels with like 1, 2, and 3, but especially 4, 5, and 6, they were all about the narrative story. Like the story was dark side, light side, Jedi, Sith, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, Han Solo, Darth Vader. Now, and again, it's not a criticism of you or anyone else, but now it's look at the moving colors. Isn't it nice? Look at the battle scenes. These are good battle scenes, aren't they? Oh, look, baby Grogu's done something cute again. Oh, don't you all love it? What was the narrative? Like, what was the narrative? And I'll tell you one
Mm.
thing, 1,000,000% Moff Gideon's not fucking dead.
Do you not think?
Oh no, they won't kill him off. They didn't kill him off the last time. He escaped from prison nice and easy. He was in like an indestructible suit.
He was pretty burnt and dead to me.
But we didn't see him.
Yeah, I suppose we don't have hardcore evidence, but
There's one thing that you've
yeah.
learned from Disney is that they don't kill anyone. Like we've had this conversation with Marvel, we've had it with Star Wars before. They won't kill anyone off.
Mm.
And if they do, I've seen some people um, online saying that Moff Gideon is arguably the best Star Wars villain, and I'm like, have you seen Darth
Oh my
Vader?
God.
Um,
Yeah,
Although they have
that's
made
quite a
Darth Vader a
statement.
complete loser in what he did in Obi-Wan and things like that. But let's talk about the episode. I don't think we're going to be able to talk about it narratively from start to finish. Let's talk about it generally first. This episode was the second part of 2 episodes which tried to set up the whole narrative of the whole the whole third season. But instead of doing it across the third season, they tried to do it in 2 episodes. And one of the words we saw in all of the big, newspaper reports and biggest pieces of feedback were that this was extremely rushed. And I think me and you have the same opinion of that. This felt like something that wasn't set up and didn't really have a linear narrative for us to follow throughout. What did you think on that? Did you agree with that, or are you in the opinion of actually it was a little bit a little bit better structured than maybe they've got credit for?
No, I totally agree with the reports that have come out. Um, in that we were talking off their air then, I felt no attachment, no emotion in that final fight scene when Grogu, Bo-Katan, and Din
Oh,
Djarin were fighting Moff Gideon.
yeah.
And also, I'll quickly just add, without going off subject, how I didn't realize Moff Gideon could fight. He was
I
a very
yeah,
good fighter in
I
that
will
scene there.
I will say that they have made him a good, like a arguably too good a fighter for like a general within the Empire who wouldn't have to do much hand-to-hand combat. But I will say that is a continuation of what he was like in season 2. Like you remember he had the fight
Remember,
with, so he had the fight in the finale with the Beskar spear and the dark saber with Mando. So he could hold himself up hand to hand with Mando at the end of season 2.
right?
But it was on
Okay, fair
another
enough then.
level. It was on another level this
Mm.
week, especially seeing as he was only broken out of prison 3 episodes ago that we became aware of it. So he can't have been out for that long, or the New Republic would have found out about it. You would assume, but that pilot came across the wreckage. It wasn't like it was reported or anything. So Star Wars. I will say that one of the funniest things that I'm just going to sort of link to something you said is like you said about like the special effects and how good things look. I mean, if I see Grogu flip ever again, I'm gonna flip. The
So yeah,
the sorry, let's call it the fight scene with quotation marks with the guards, the red guards. I've forgotten their name again. The red guards and Grogu when Grogu is in the IG-11 suit, which again made no sense for him to be in it because they literally chopped it in half straight away. Like, he didn't defend himself with the IG droid. It's not like he fired any weapons or like pushed them away or anything. He just was retreating backwards, got cut in half, then jumped out of it. And then Grogu spent a good 5 minutes running around some lights suspended from the ceiling, like simply jumping from one to the other, avoiding sword swipes from these guys before Mando just turned up and saved the day. So the special effects are good in some places, but when it comes to Grogu, if I see that little shit flip or run ever again, because there was a scene at the end when he goes to visit the New Republic pilot and his feet weren't touching the floor.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I saw it as well. And do you know what? I wrote it. This is the first episode I've actually paused and wrote notes as I've watched it. And before, in that scene where he was jumping around the lights and stuff, it made me think of Team America, and I didn't write it down. But then when I saw him when he wasn't even touching the floor whilst he was walking, I was like, oh my God, it's literally like watching Team America where the puppets just kind of like dangle their feet on the floor.
It's horrendous.
It was really bad.
It's horrendous. And to me, it screams, I don't care, in terms of like the director, Jon Favreau, who apparently, I've heard rumors, mainly this is not confirmed, but this was spoken about on Friday Night Tights on the Nerdrotic channel, which has obviously got a huge number of subscribers compared to us. But there are rumors that Jon Favreau's out the door now at the end of this season, which really, let's be honest, it looks like they don't care anymore. And again, I think that Star Wars, in the way that they approach things, instead of telling interesting stories, they just go, look at the shiny thing, look at the moving colors, look at this, look at that. It was just embarrassing for me. Like, should we just go through all the problems we had with it? Because if we talk about the positives, there were, right off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that I thought was good about this episode. Maybe the fact that Mando was actually, like, Din Djarin was one of the key characters in this episode, and it wasn't just Bo-Katan doing everything, which it has been for the last 3 or 4, which again confuses me so much, because it's like, oh, they lean so much towards Bo-Katan being the main character, and then when it comes to the finale, they're like, oh, well, let's make Mando at least equal. But then they focus on him at the end of the episode as well, when he goes back to Navarro and he settles down. But is he going to settle down because then they teased this, like, the next season or the next step in their evolution as a partnership, in that he's going to do case-by-case contracts for the New Republic in, like, the Outer Rim and stuff like that, which I have to say is actually the thing they should have been doing for the last 2 seasons. God! Well, at least this season, in that what it started as, a bounty hunter who was working outside of the New Republic and outside the law. It was the best season for that specific reason. Get rid of Grogu, go back to it. Instead, they kept Grogu around, reintroducing him without showing him in this series, and they just had him pop up again in Boba Fett. For them to then do this all season to build up to nothing, for him to then tease the fact he might go back to bounty hunting, which would genuinely be the best thing they can do with this show if it's going to continue. But other than that, I can't think of any positives.
No, that's fair. I've literally put that one positive about the special effects and just seeing Mandalorians fly around. And like you said, that's nothing to do with the story. I just thought it looked cool.
Yeah, and that's it. But then, like, comparatively, you've got that, and then you've got the Grogu stuff, and it's just like, are we taking the piss? And also, the TIE fight. Oh, let's go through it one by one. I know you've got a written list. There are things that I don't write as much down as you. I like to go off the top of my head and use my emotional input and how to review things. But do you want to talk about something that you've written down as, like, one of your key points to discuss as a real negative or a criticism?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that I wrote down was something that we talked about last week, was Din Djarin being captured. And I said to you, well, there's got to be a reason why he was captured, because why wouldn't Moff Gideon kill him? And then I was really disappointed in the first 5 minutes, because he was captured for no reason.
But right, here's the worst thing. So he wasn't just, I don't know if this is on your sheet. it's not just that he was captured for no reason. He escaped without any help, and they had captured literally who they understood to be the leader of the Mandalorians, because the last time Moff Gideon saw him, he had the Darksaber, right? So he's essentially one of the main Mandalorians that he's encountered before. 2 guards. He had 2 guards walking him down a hallway, and he beat them both up, escaped on his own, and then the thing that I literally, like you said, this is 5 minutes in, the thing that sent me over the edge was then Grogu turned up to help him. And I was like, where have you come from? How have you got here? Like,
Me too.
You were locked behind a blast door and you had to escape through a little hole with Bo-Katan and the rest of the Mandalorians. How are you even here? And how did you find him? I just, like, that really bothered me. I was like, what, just plot armor kept him alive, and then the plot needed this to happen, therefore he arrived at this point at this exact time. Just terrible writing, and this is why I think Jon Favreau must just not care to have, like you said, him captured and then like for you, sort of convince you that this is going to mean something. This is actually something you need to care about. Nah, less than 5 minutes in, he's escaped, and also he should be dead. Why are they keeping him prisoner? The plan is destroy and kill all the Mandalorians. Like they sent TIE fighters up to destroy the main ship and the blockade. They had all those troopers to try and shoot down and kill all the Mandalorians. They weren't trying to capture them. Why did he keep Din Djarin alive?
Yeah, that was the only question from the last episode. So I was thinking there must be a reason. He wants Din Djarin for a reason, but then
the other thing, Italian hands. The other thing that really bothers me, and this bothered me in Ant-Man as well, Quantumania. Why did they let him keep his fucking suit?
Oh, what? Din Djarin keep his suit?
If you've captured him, just take his Beskar armor off of him.
Oh, right, yeah. What, straight away?
Yeah, because then when he actually does start to escape, they're trying to shoot him and bullets are bouncing off of him like they always do. If you had just taken at least his chest plate off, you could have killed him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't understand what the thought process is with, oh, we'll capture this person. Oh, he's escaped. And it happened in Rise of Skywalker, the last part of the terrible sequel trilogy, where they kept teasing that characters had died, like when Chewbacca got blown up in that transport ship, and then the next scene is Chewbacca back on the screen, absolutely fine. They don't do anything with consequence or impact.
No.
So yes, you're correct. That was absolutely terrible. What was the next thing on your list, young man?
So just to follow that, actually, when Grogu does save Din Djarin, it's something you mentioned last week, is that they're using Grogu as like a merchandise tool. And it made me think Grogu is the equivalent of Ash Ketchum and Pikachu. That's essentially what they've created with Din Djarin and Grogu. And I just thought, I know we just talked about this, but why was Grogu there? What was he going to do? Like, exactly where did he just come from?
But why is he?
Really
why did they even
really
take? Like, the only reason really that they took him onto the planet is because you'd like to think they'd planned episode to episode. The only reason they had him on the planet is so that he wasn't on the ship when it started getting blown up, because he can't fly. But do you know what can fly? His orb that he was in. And Mando's ship that apparently Grogu can pilot with the help of R5 3 or 4 episodes ago. Like, this shit happens in this show, and then they just don't do it anymore. The thing that bothers me the most with Grogu is that he had an IG-11 suit that had him completely exposed with no self-defense system.
That was a weird story, having that.
It just made no sense. It would have been genuinely easier for someone to carry him. Oh, but that was terrible. I can't even remember what happened in this episode, because all it is to me in my head is Mando escaped. He went after Moff Gideon, and then the rest of the Mandalorians had a gunfight in the middle of the air with all the troopers until Grogu had to go flipping around on the lights. Then Mando saved him. Bo-Katan lost in a hand-to-hand combat fight with Moff Gideon, and then Mando Grogu, and Bo-Katan sort of defeated what's his name? Moff Gideon, until the big thing blew up.
Well, the big thing there's three questions I had for the end of this episode from looking at previous episodes and the stories from previous episodes. Hey?
Let's do it. Let's answer these questions.
Yeah, let's answer these questions. So I have three. Who were the spies? That was never answered. What was the point of the cloning? No idea. And what was the last one?
All the cloning.
What was the point of the Doctor episode?
Well, right. So the cloning, I'm just going to isolate your second question very, very quickly. The only reason they were doing that is to set up the fact that they were already cloning people in order to then set up Supreme Leader Snoke in the sequel series. Do you remember Snoke, the creepy old guy who was dressed in like a gold robe in episode 7 and 8 that was like Kylo Ren's master, but then it turned out he was a cloned puppet for the Emperor the whole time. That's the only reason they've done that, is to try and justify why they had Snoke show up out of nowhere and then be killed and then turn out to be a test tube baby in the final film.
I see. Okay.
That's the only reason they were doing it.
You've just seen Mandalorian.
If you're just watching The Mandalorian, you'll have no idea. And you are 1,000,000% hammer on the nail on the head. What was the point of the Doctor episode? It was the second lowest rated episode of this series based on IMDb. And it didn't facilitate anything at all other than telling us that there are people within the New Republic that are actually working for the Empire. But you could have told us that in a scene. Like, there are people who are working in the New Republic that are reformed Empire employees. Then the next scene, you could have that woman who was the main antagonist in the New Republic talking to Moff Gideon like she did at the start of this episode, and you'd be like, oh, she's still evil.
That's what you needed, isn't it?
That would have been it. I don't know. I suppose the only thing that they did that whole Doctor episode for was so that they could wipe his memory at the end, so that he couldn't do any cloning or any science for the New Republic. But then again,
when he came back, I was like, oh, I thought he was already dead, or I thought he was kind of he was a big character for season 1, and then I thought when he came back, I was like, oh, okay, he's back. But I didn't really need to see him again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't need to see in this series. Most of it actually was not needed. I could have done without seeing most of it. It's it's far and away, it's not the worst thing that Disney have made in Star Wars. I mean, I've seen Obi-Wan. That was terrible. I hated the Obi-Wan series. Book of Boba Fett was pretty bad. But this is really, really shooting for worst thing they've made. It's pretty terrible. And like we said, the main problem with it is that they've had, is it 8 episodes? It was 8, wasn't it? They had 8 episodes to tell a story, and they didn't tell any stories. Like the pirates, they showed up and then they went, we've got to find a new memory chip for IG-11. Oh no, don't worry, we've turned it into a walking skeleton for Grogu. Oh, we've got to go back to Mandalore so I can have a bath. He had a bath. We've got to bring the Mandalorians together. Bring the Mandalorians together. We're going to go and retake Mandalore. Oh, no, the Empire are there. Okay, we've beaten them in 10 minutes of a fight. Also, it's the Empire. And I know that they're trying to sort of lay low, but you don't lay low by trying to overthrow a planet. So if you're going to try and overthrow a planet, why would you only send 200 troopers and about 14 TIE fighters with Moff Gideon to try and overthrow the whole Mandalorian race, who have almost impenetrable armor?
Yeah, seems like a bit of a small number, doesn't it?
God almighty, it was terrible. This episode was a complete, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like a microcosm of everything that had come before it. It was like a microcosm of everything that had come before it. This doesn't make sense. This has no impact, and this is not good. And that was the whole final episode. It bothered me greatly that there was no narrative whatsoever, and that genuinely, what's the word I'm looking for, negatively impacts the viewing experience, because if you've got no narrative and you've got nothing to follow, you are just watching action scenes play out for the sake of action scenes. and then those action scenes don't really lead to anything. Like, look at where we started this series, and I apologize, I just keep ranting at you, but look at where we started this series. Okay, Grogu's with Mando, and the Mandalorians don't really have Mandalore as it once was, and the Empire is still building behind the scenes. Where are we now at the end? Exactly the same position.
They've got Mandalore. They've got Mandalore now, haven't they?
But it's not the planet. It's still not the planet it once was. They've, in theory, they've got Mandalore, but at the same time, if the Empire want to take it back, they just fly in there with 200 ships and blow it to hell.
Yeah, because you made a good point, because as you said, there wasn't like a huge army with the Empire, so they could just call their troops, couldn't they?
But I said to Philippa, I was like, come on, all the Mandalorians, all 33 of us, let's go. We've got to save the planet. There's like none of them. There's like 30 odd people.
Yeah.
It winds me up so much. There are like 30 Mandalorians. They're like, we've got to save. And then you've got that stupid armorer character. We've got to save the planet for Mandalore. Yeah. And she was killing people in midair with a hammer.
Yeah, she's got a mighty good accuracy with that hammer.
She's cool.
But in keeping with this season, there's only 30 people that live on a planet anyway, so it's fine.
And every planet is only one city or town.
Yeah.
There's like we've got to retake Mandalore. We've got to retake our home planet. It's convenient that us and the Empire and those pirate Mandalorians that were living on the planet all happened to be in the same place at the same time. And also, do you remember that they were on like that Mandalorian like pirate ship thing? Those guys that were living on the planet still were like floating around on the surface on. Do you remember like that giant dinosaur thing popped out the ground that destroyed the ship and they had to run away from?
Oh, yeah.
Where did that go? And how are they going to kill that?
I thought that was the thing that was under the water.
No,
it's not though, is it? It's something else.
No, because they showed that still under the water at the end of the episode.
I don't know then.
Honestly, I can't really process what we're supposed to care about with Star Wars anymore. Like the only
go
on, mate.
I was going to say the spies is something that I still can't get my head around. They had a whole episode about it. It was episode 7 was called The Spies. And I did listen to a podcast called Children of the Watch, which is quite a big Star Wars themed podcast, sorry. And they had a whole episode of trying to figure out who the spy could be. And we mentioned it on our last podcast to say it could be the armorer. But there was no link to the spies at all. I had no idea why they called that episode The Spies. So that was something that was left unanswered completely.
This is the thing. You have an opportunity to build a narrative and follow it from start to finish in a season, but also an episode. In the episode, nothing really, like there wasn't even a narrative for the episode. It was just a case of, let's go take Mandalore. Pew, 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 we won. And you could have had it that Bo-Katan turned around when it's Mando and Grogu and Bo-Katan versus Moff Gideon. You could have Bo-Katan hand him the Darksaber and say, I'm joining the Empire so that I can have Mandalore. And that she gets Mandalore if they defeat the Mandalorians. And I'm just like, that would be a good hook for the next season. That would be good. But instead, they didn't touch on the spies, but they didn't touch on any narrative reason for you to care beyond this season. And like they did the piss takey thing that they always do, and they have Grogu and Mando have this really like cute shot at the end of them sat outside their house on Navarro, and they get the people who don't care about Star Wars as a franchise, like my wife, who sits there and goes, no. Because that's the thing that lives in people's memories, is they're like, oh, they've got a little house on Navarro. And it's like, yes, but they could have had the house on Navarro 8 episodes ago and just not gone on any of these adventures. If they hadn't gone anywhere, they would have had the house on Navarro still. Because if you remember, in episode 1, I think it's literally episode 1. The guy who runs Navarro said, "Hey, if you want to retire, you and your little family, you live here. That's absolutely fine." So you could, in episode 1, could have gone, "Yeah, yeah, all right, I'll live here," and
And we
that's
could have
it.
saved hours of watching something.
We watched 8 hours
Yeah.
or so of this series. He could have just had his house with Grogu right at the start.
Yeah.
He'd be none the
Yeah, he could
wiser
have.
to Moff Gideon being around. The only reason Moff Gideon even came back out the shadows is because the Mandalorians tried to take Mandalore. But if he stayed in Navarro, they wouldn't have tried to take Mandalore because Bo-Katan wouldn't have the darksaber that he somehow still, I don't understand, handed it to her.
Yeah, he told a Porky to Bo-Katan's army, didn't he? He was like, "Oh yes, she bested me in combat,
Well, no, it was that
but
she
not
saved
really."
him. I lost to the turtle monster that ended up being a little General Grievous ripoff, and then
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
she beat that. So she technically, it's like that's not how it works. But okay.
Also, do you notice that the fight scene between Bo-Katan and the
Moff
new
Gideon.
leader of that mercenary army?
Oh
A
yeah.
couple episodes back.
Oh mate, we didn't touch on
Is
that. That was awful.
is his name Ass, as in ASS? I swear, he
Do
was
you know
called
what?
something. I said, "Hang on, did they just call him Ass?"
You could honestly tell me that his name was Cock and Balls, all one word, and I'd believe you because I don't know what his name was because there was no reason to care about that character whatsoever.
I thought he
And
could be
again,
the spy, but nah.
but you could have had, instead of doing all the like fetch quest stuff that they did in the first 5 episodes, you could have just had episode 1. Bo-Katan goes, no, Mando goes to Bo-Katan. I need to find the bathtub so that I can have a bath and that I can be a Mandalorian again. He has his bath, and then she's like, "I want to take Mandalore back," and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I like without we could talk about this in more depth and actually come up with a reason." But he's like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's take Mandalore. I want to take back this planet." And then the subsequent 6 or 7 episodes, you could have Moff Gideon planning to take over Mandalore, and then the main story be trying to actually gather the Mandalorians together from all over the galaxy instead of just going to one planet to find one load of Mandalorians, defeat one guy, and then all of them be like, "Okay, we follow Bo-Katan now."
I know, it was just such a shame because I was really excited for this season. As soon as I saw the trailer of like load of Mandalorians in it, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be amazing,"
Mate, moving
and I had
colors.
so much hope.
Mate,
I
moving
did.
colors. That's what they do. They just put loads of moving colors on the screen. They're like, "Look,"
Mm.
and then
Uh,
people. But then that's the thing. I say people will watch it. It's been the lowest viewed series as well. This season's been the lowest viewed season in Mandalorian history so far. And Kathleen Kennedy at the top of Lucasfilm and everyone else that's working on Disney Star Wars writing these episodes, whether it be what's her name from flipping Jurassic Park, the ginger woman who's in that, Bryce Dallas Howard, she's directed some episodes, Jon Favreau, Taika Waititi, whoever it's been, Dave Filoni, it's just not good anymore. People liked it in the first season because it had a premise. This is a bounty hunter that came across a child, and he was tasked with bringing that child to their people to be able to then go on and go back to his life. But he's never gone back to the life that people were enjoying him in at the start. It's just been fetch quest after fetch quest after fetch quest, and it's just not good. So what do they do now? Like if they go back to the bounty hunting, that would genuinely be the best thing they can do. But even then, Star Wars is so dead. Like they've killed Star Wars. Mandalorian was the thing that gave it a little bit of life. It's like you defibrillate something. Oh, here comes the Mandalorian. Boom, boom. And you go, beep, 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 season 3. Beep, dead. Completely dead again. Well done, Lucasfilm. You've killed something else. What are they going to do? Oh, let's bring out 3 movies. One that wraps up the Mandalorian franchise and Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano. Then what else is the other thing? The Acolyte, which is just like looks like a woman power prequel movie about the Force and stuff like that. And then they're bringing back Rey, George. Of all the things they
I
could do,
know,
they're
both.
bringing back Rey. Everyone hated Rey. No one likes
Yeah,
Rey.
and now she's back. God
Just like
damn it!
Just like Bo-Katan, Rey could do no wrong. No one ever beat Rey. Rey never had to learn anything. The same as Bo-Katan, and that's why no one likes.
I know, mate. It is frustrating because I've got a Mandalorian t-shirt on right now. I love the character,
I've
and
got a
it's just a
Mandalorian
shame that it's
t-shirt.
ended out in this way.
I got a Mandalorian t-shirt, but from season 1 when it was good, because I was like, this is actually worth watching. I'm back into Star Wars, and what they've done is they've completely killed that enthusiasm again because they've not told a good story. Like, what do you know more about the Star Wars universe than when we started watching The Mandalorian season 1? Nothing.
Nothing.
It's such a shame. They had such an opportunity to really carry the Star Wars franchise on top of the Mandalorian's back. And they've absolutely killed it because, again, like with everything, they've gone, that's popular, let's ruin that. That's really popular, let's put a female lead in secret without, making their own show. Let's make the main male character a complete idiot who can't actually do anything. Let's take Grogu and put him on screen every 20 seconds going,
yeah.
That's it.
It's interesting. I think when Din Djarin, he dropped off Grogu to the Jedi, I thought, oh, this is a sad ending. But I thought it does make sense because he's a Jedi, so he should be with his Jedi family.
The emotion, I'm going to see if I can find it on YouTube whilst we're talking. The emotion in that scene where Grogu leaves Mando, is that end of season 2? Like,
yeah.
Like when they actually said goodbye to each other, it's so emotional. And Pedro Pascal's in it and does an incredible job at face acting that scene, if that's even the right way to say it. Like you know better than I do. Like, is it called face acting or like just emotional response to things?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Like, it's farcical what they've done to this series. I'm gonna just really quickly, if you'll give me the time of day.
So no problems.
I'm gonna just share my screen again a minute because I think it's actually worth watching. Like, is that shared or not? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right, give me 2 secs because share sound. Right. Oh, I've got it muted. I've got it on playback speed a bit higher, obviously, but the emotion in this scene, for them to just flip it back and go, "Nah, he's back now."
Don't be afraid.
You flipping there?
Huh?
No flipping there.
No. And if he does, like, I don't know how they've managed to make it look worse. Like, that looks better than it does now.
Yeah, they shouldn't have showed his feet.
Like, I'm sorry, but that scene compared to what we get now, like, and this is the thing, so I think that, again, we talked about, like, and we will stop in a minute. We talked about the fact that he's still in it for no real reason. That's the reason, is because they basically wrote the 2 seasons. This is the story across 2 seasons, getting back to the Jedi. That's the main thing that we're trying to achieve. You actually get to that point, you give him back, and then Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy, whoever's the head of Lucasfilm, goes, no, we can't get rid of Grogu. He's way too good at making money for us. You've got to get him back in the show somehow. So then they wangle him back in the Book of Boba Fett, and what's he done all season? And that, oh my God, that's just brought me to a great point. How the flippity fuck did Grogu save Bo-Katan and Mando with that Force shield when he hasn't been trained in using the Force by a Jedi because he left the Jedi to go back to Mando?
He's never done that before, so.
Well, we need him to use it. The plot needs them to all survive, so he's going to have to use the Force to a considerably high level. that he's never done before. And we've ever seen that on screen in Star Wars, like a force shield to that level. I don't think so.
No.
But
I
he's
mean,
not been
him
trained.
moving stuff around, that made sense when he was like
Yes,
the red
that's fine.
guards, when he was
But
like
that's
moving
fine.
their weapons and stuff.
That's absolutely fine because he wasn't like flipping them and turning them back on them and using them with the force. Just moving stuff like, oh, get that away from him, oh, get that away from him, knock him over. That is absolutely fine. But to produce a force shield strong enough to withstand that blast and protect 3 people, nah.
Yeah, that lost me as well.
God, this show sucked. Well, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube as well as Spotify. We thank you very much. We will be back again next week for our weekly roundup, but we will have other videos coming out in the next few weeks as well. So keep an eye out for those. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Toby Wellington. He has been K. George Turner. We have been the Flatback 3, and we will see you soon.